Last year, our shul did not have any sukkah. Baruch Hashem, this year we do. Thank you to Zevi for building the sukkah. We're capitalizing on it now. Usachi had the idea to have soup every day for the sukkah. But even though our sukkah is not so big and we can't have big meals in it, but there's something that people can do in it that they missed last year, and that is they can make the bracha on the lulav in the sukkah. And that comes from the Arizal, the Shalach HaKadosh, the Aruch HaShulchan, who write that a person should really make the bracha on the lulav before davening in the sukkah. Now, is that so pashut? Is that what you do? Do you think that's the right thing to do? There are those who disagree, because it seems to contradict potentially a famous principle. Whenever we have a conflict between two mitzvahs, what do we say? Tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir koidem. The mitzvah that's more common comes first. And what's more common? The mitzvah of shacharis, davening in the morning, or the sukkah. Sukkah comes once a year. So you should daven shacharis first. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says, I don't agree with this practice of making the bracha and the lulav before you daven. So how are we to explain the minhag that many do have? So one approach is the Sdei Chemed from Ukraine 150 years ago, and he says that this whole principle of tadir v'she'ena tadir, tadir kodim, is only when you want to do both things at the same time, and you want to know which one to do first, so then you do the more common one first. For example, you're benching, and you have to say Ritzei and Ya'alav V'Yavo. Which one should you say first? You say Ritzei because it's more common. But if you want to do the thing that's tadir later, you want to daven shacharis later, and you want to say lulav, do for the bracha on the lulav now, that you can do. And Reb Moshe disagrees. Reb Moshe says, he gives an example. He says, if let's say it's the summertime, it wasn't Sukkot, it was Pesach, and we're starting Sfiras HaOmer, and you normally daven Ma'ariv late, you have a 10 o'clock Ma'ariv, and you want to know if you should say Sfiras HaOmer now. You want to chap the mitzvah, you can say Sfiras HaOmer now, it's already dark. You can count the Omer, but you normally daven Ma'ariv later. Reb Moshe says you should not count the Omer before you daven Ma'ariv because of Tadir. But the Sdei Chemed would disagree. The Sdei Chemed would say that no, that since you're planning to daven Ma'ariv later, then you can daven Ma'ariv later, even though that's Tadir. You're planning to do the Tadir thing later, and you can say Sfiras HaOmer now. Another potential answer to distinguish where we do say Tadir and where we don't, that we're not going to say it in the context of Sukkah, is from Tosfos and Yuma, which is also followed by many of the Achronim, like Chuvas V'Anagas, that suggests that the principle is limited to a scenario where they are apples to apples. Tosfos says that when you're talking about a carbon tamid and a carbon musaf, and you want to know which one comes first, so between the two karbanos, you bring the one that's more common first. But if it's two different types of karbanos, two different types of mitzvos, then the rule of Tadir doesn't apply. And based on this, again, we would be able to answer that even though Shachris is more common than Lulav, but they're two different types of mitzvahs, and the rule of Tadir doesn't apply to dictate which comes first. And based on this, in the Hagos, on the Kaivetz Halacha Sefer from Rabbi Forsheimer from Lakewood, he says that based on this, we will also permit someone to count the Omer before davening Ma'ariv, even if we don't go with the Sdei Chemed's reasoning, but because of this, that they are two separate types of mitzvahs. But not everyone agrees to this. The Bir Halacha says in Siman Reish Nun that let's say that he's talking about Hachana, the mitzvah Vehechinu, to prepare on Erev Shabbos, not a malacha, not preparing from Shabbos to the weekday, but the mitzvah to prepare an Erev Shabbos for Shabbos, which you should start to do as soon as possible on Friday morning. What about preparing before Shachris? You daven, let's say you daven normally at a 9:30 Shachris, and the Grove opens at 8, and you want to get your shopping in first. The Bir Halacha writes that Kriya Shema should come first, because it's Tadir. What do you mean? You normally daven Shachris later. The Sdei Chemed's reasoning. What do you mean? It's two different types of mitzvahs. You have Kriya Shema is one type of mitzvah. It's not two davenings. It's not Ritzei and Ya'alav V'Yavo. It's not a Tamid and a Musaf. It's davening It's saying Kriya Shema davening versus Hachana preparing for Shabbat, two completely different types of mitzvahs, and still the Bir Halacha says you should go with the one that's more common first. So you see that there are those who will side with Reb Moshe's point of view that Ta'adir, the rule of Ta'adir should apply here, and that's why. And so we do find there are two approaches. The safest approach here, if you want to avoid the machlokes, is to make the bracha in the sukkah, make the bracha on Lulav in the sukkah after Chazaras Hashatz. I was talking to a Rav, Arav Yantif, who said that really that's the ideal, but to institute that for the whole tzibur, to say that we take a break after Chazaras Hashatz to go out into the sukkah, that's already a Tircha de Tzibura question. So this is the discussion about when to make the bracha on the lulav in the sukkah. But why do we make the bracha on the lulav in the sukkah? Arizal did it. But the Sfarim HaKadoshim give us a deeper insight into this. We had a shuk here. We sold the Dalad Minim. It was called the Dalad Minim shuk. But are there really 4 Minim? Are there only? If you came home with only 4 objects after that shuk, you probably want a refund. You should have come home with 7 objects: 3 hadassim, 2 aravos, 1 lulav, 1 esrog. So the Sfarim HaKadoshim tell us these 7 minim correspond to the 7 ushpizin that come to visit the sukkah, deepening the connection between the lulav, the arba minim, and the sukkah. The 3 hadassim represent the 3 eyes, the einayim, the einay ha'eda, the visionaries, the forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the first 3 ushpizin, who set the course for our people. The 2 aravos, representing the lips, the mouth, representing Moshe and Aaron. Moshe is the mouth, Olakim Yadaber v'Moshe enenu b'kol. Aaron was the mouthpiece for Moshe Rabbeinu. Sifsei kohen yishmeru das. Also, Aaron represents the koyach of silence, of closing the mouth, which is the other aspect of the lips. Vayidom Aaron. Toila eretz al belima. We said throughout the course of the Yamim Naroim, Hashem hangs the earth on nothingness, but Gemara tells us, Al misha boilem es piv b'shas meriva, that the world depends on the schus of those who are able to restrain themselves, to hold their mouth, to close their mouth from saying something back during an argument. That's Aaron HaKohen. That's so the 2 aravos is Moshe and Aaron. The lulav represents Yosef HaTzadik. Tzadik HaTomar Yifrach. The tzaddik will blossom like a date palm, like the lulav. That's Yosef HaTzadik, who was like the lulav, with a shedra, with a backbone, a spine, did not bow to his yetzer amid all of that temptation of Eshes Potiphar. Tzaddik Yesod Olam, he created in the fabric of Klal Yisrael that they should be able to withstand the nisyonos of the Nashim Mitzrios throughout their time in Mitzrayim. Yosef had the dream that all the other bundles wrapped around, bowed to his. That's why everything crowds around the lulav. Because we all need that ability to be Omed ben Yisayin. Because Yisrael afal pi shechata, Yisrael, a little person doesn't aver, can do tshuva, but if a person does not overcome the Nisayon that Yosef had, then the child's a guy. So that's that central pillar of the tzaddik. And then the esrog, Keneged, the heart, is Keneged, the king, Keneged David, the last of the Ushpizin. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Malachim, why does the pasuk tell us about the king that he shouldn't have too many wives? The reason the pasuk says is Lo Yasser Levavo, his heart shouldn't turn. Writes the Rambam, and I quote, Al Asaras Liboy Kpidu Torah. The pasuk is worried about his heart turning. Shnemer V'Lo Yasser Levavo. Why? Sheliboy Hulev Kol Kahal Yisrael. The heart of the king is the heart of the people. That's what the king represents. And that's the esrog. And we put all of this together. The 7 minim in the sukkah with the 7 ushpizin, trying to bring out each of these aspects, which of course there's even deeper layers. They trace to the first 7 spheros: Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And then the esrog is Malchus, which is a different type, and so the Malchus needs to be together with the others, the Mashpia and the Makabel. We recognize there's a cycle. we receive from Hashem, who gives to us. And there's this harmonious balance that comes out in the Sukkah. And when we shake our Lulav there. Some halachic reminders for tonight. Kiddush Levana, we had, for the first time that I can remember, we weren't able to say it Motzei Yom Kippur. If you still haven't said it, you could say it now. Tonight, you should eat your bread, if you can, b'chidei achilas pras. You should eat a kazayas, at least b'chidei achilas pras, within 3 or 4 minutes, just like the first night of Pesach. And Bach writes, Laman yedu deraseichem, the pasuk gives, very unusual that the pasuk tells us that you have to do the mitzvah with a certain intent. Some say the kavana is ma'akev. When you're reading in the Sukkah, we should have in mind that we're doing this so that we should remember that Hashem put us in Sukkah, either Ananeh HaKavod or Sukkahs Mamish. And we should be b'simcha. This is man simchasenu. This is the time to be happy. There was a Russian Jewish soldier who came before the Slonim Rebbe, and his face was shining. And the Rebbe said to him, "Why is your face shining? What? Tell me, you must have done something really special recently." So the soldier says, "Well, I was on duty, and I realized it was the first night of Sukkot. And I told my officer, I need to go to sit in the Sukkah tonight, and the officer said, no way, we're going to add extra guards to make sure you don't run away to go to that." He put extra guards around him. The guards fell asleep. This Jewish soldier jumps the fence, runs as quickly as he can. He finds the first Sukkah. He goes in. He wakes up the people who are sleeping in there. He says, "Can I have some bread to eat?" And he takes the bread and he makes a leishiv, and he eats in the Sukkah. And he's telling this over. He turns to the Slonim Rebbe and he says, that must be it, right? That must be what I did. That I risked my life to go eat in the Sukkah. Slonim Rebbe said, no, that's not it. Did you do anything else? He said, well, after I washed in the Sukkah, I ate, and I benched. He said, no, that's not it. Did you do anything else? He said, well, it's a little bit embarrassing, but after I benched, I got up and I was so overcome with joy that I was able to fulfill the mitzvah. I danced and I sang. And the Rebbe said, that's why your face is glowing. Because it's one thing to do a mitzvah, but it's another thing to really experience the joy of the mitzvah. And that's what we should try to accomplish over Sukkot. As we sit in the Sukkah tonight, and here's how you could think, from Pesach starts the inspiration. It's springtime. We get that first inspiration of love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shavuos, we get the Torah of how to put that into action, but Sukkot is when it's fully integrated. It's not something on the outside, it's a part of our life. It's what we eat, it's what we sleep, it's how we live. And that's simcha, that's joy. When a person is fully integrated, all the spheros, all the physical and spiritual, all acting as one. That in that harmonious union, surrounded by the Sukkah, surrounded with the Daled Minim, the 7 species, with the 7 avos, with the 7 ushpis, and all together, then I'm happy. Because then I'm acting as one complete integrated person. When I have conflict and I have tension and I have this part of me versus that part of me versus that part of me, then I'm not happy. And that's the simcha we should try to take and experience as we go through this yantif. And we should all be zocha to the simchas olam al roisham with the gula shleim meher v'meinu. Amen.